What's up, everyone? This is the Real Estate Ride Along YouTube live Q&A show. So I'm Chris Lopez in the red, Terrance Doyle in the black. So introduce ourselves. We are the host of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Ride Along show. This is a show that Terrance had the idea on a few years ago to bring some guests along as he walks and dissects and turns around some projects. And then as it progressed, we got in Bigger Pockets. And so Terrance is a very active investor here in Denver and Des Moines, Iowa, doing a ton of multifamily redevelopment projects, just finding some great value add stuff. I'm an investor and an agent focused on investors here in the Denver market. So love to answer your questions here. Terrance, how's it going?
Doing fantastic. It's pretty warm out and it's a great day and we're past the election. It's time to buy some real estate.
All right.
Let's put the politics behind us and let's go do some deals. So that's
all right. Someone with some common sense and positive outlook there.
That's right.
So guys, start dropping the questions in here. I see a couple lining up here. So we are just going to really dive into the YouTube Q&A questions on here. And after this YouTube live ends at 3 o'clock Mountain, our next Ride Along show drops, which is a fourplex we walked. I think it's a fourplex,
That's right. Fourplex.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
But you purchased and refinanced, I think, in the same year or in 12-month period, right?
Yeah, basically a 12-month period.
Yeah.
It's actually a fourplex I bought from you. So it's a really, you get to see like both sides of the story. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So Terrance, Danny Soto says, can you buy a 5-unit multifamily with no prior multifamily experience?
Absolutely, you can. I think the question you're trying to ask is it smart or wise to have a 5-plex be your first project? If 5's an interesting number, Danny, I think that there could be some advantages to a 4-plex and you get the same effect for your balance sheet and your cash flow. A 4-plex, as Chris knows, he does it a lot for his clients. You get better financing. You can get FHA financing, which will give you more money down. So essentially you can buy, and I think the requirement is actually up to 1-1 people are approved for.
In Denver it is.
Yeah, in Denver.
Every market is different.
You're right. Yeah, in Denver, a buyer can be approved up to 1.1 million and they'll cover sometimes 97% of the purchase. Is that right? Yeah. 97. So that doesn't exist. Yeah, for a 5-unit.
For an owner-occupied house act.
Right, if you're going to live there, yeah. So I think that, Danny, if it's one of your first multifamily investments, I would probably look at a 4-unit because you're going to get better financing terms and it's just going to make it less money out of pocket for you, de-risk it, and it's going to allow you to learn, create good cash flow, and you're going to get the same effect as if it was 5 units with just less money out of pocket. When you get into 5 units and larger, you're going to get into a commercial loan, and they will look at your balance sheet. They're going to look at the property. They're going to look at your experience. It's going to be much more difficult to get a 5-unit done than a 4-unit. But yes, you can buy a 4 or 5 unit as your first property. Yeah, I would recommend it for.
And the biggest thing that I've noticed, because I've helped a handful of investors buy some 8 to 15 apartments as their first real estate investment. I think they've definitely gotten a little bit more thorough underwriting from banks. Some banks have been happy, some have not, but you can always find a local bank. The one area we've gotten a flat out no on is if you want to go out there and do like a Freddie small business loan, like a non-recourse Freddie loan, which is usually that's like the best financing for multi-use. If you have no experience, it's a flat out no.
You have to be in the program or have someone on the loan with you that has experience. Yeah.
So as our newer clients are doing, they're buying the property at the local bank. And then after, a year or two, once they do like a longer term value add up there, value add, turning the rents, upgrading them, then they're going to refinance in time non-recourse after they've had like 2 years of operator experience.
That's smart.
Yeah. So yes, you can. Ooh, dude, the questions flooded in.
Rolling in.
You pick one.
I get to pick one?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm going to give you in the driver's seat for once.
Yeah, let me be in the driver's seat. Oh, what's that one? Antoinette Martin is asking, do you need a real estate license?
For what?
Antoinette, you do not need a real estate license to basically do anything in real estate investing.
And sometimes
you just need a license if you want to represent someone buying, but you don't need a license to buy any real estate. And sometimes you have more advantages if you don't have a license. I've never had a license, but I've had really good people around me that do. And I think that's the key.
And that something really depends on your local market. Like here in Colorado, a lot of agents actually give up their license so they can do more of the creative deals. Yeah. Because, the governing body typically doesn't want you, if you're an agent, you have a fiduciary duty to the public to, hey, you're going to help that buyer get the best deal or the seller get the best price. So if you're talking to someone that has a ton of equity in their house and they're willing to sell it below fair market value, you might go in there as with your agent real estate hat on and then be like, oh, this is a really good deal.
That's right.
I will take this hat off, put my investor hat on, and buy it myself. In Colorado, that can get you in trouble. It's technically against the rules, and some markets you can. So
it comes down to liability. You have
Yes.
a lot more liability when you have a license in anything in life, insurance, anything. So the less liability in my book, the better. I have a bunch of goodies in my pocket.
yeah.
Take out. Shout out to Louie from Wisconsin. Big Ten country, baby.
So
That's a good question.
one elect. How do you determine ARV for a multifamily property? So are we talking 4 units and less or 5 and above? I'm assuming 5 and above.
Yeah, so ARV, they're going to do comps on a 4-unit, a triplex, a duplex. They're going to look at comps. And they're going to take both, right? Income and comps.
Yes.
And they'll do a blended approach.
Yeah.
And once you get over 5 units, it's going to go based on the NOI. They'll take comps, I think, into effect as well, like what things traded, but it's mostly driven by income and what the NOI is.
Yep.
So that's where we get that equation. In Denver at a 6 cap, every $100 in rent is roughly $20,000 in value for the property. So even if the apartments in the area have not increased rents, our property value can still be worth more because it's all driven by what the tenants are paying. That's the beauty of multifamily. Same thing with office, same thing with a lot of real estate. Commercially, it's driven by what the tenant is paying. It's the NOI, the net operating income.
Well said.
So that is the ARV.
And if you watch some of our ride-along show videos, we talk about, because we do some of the backwards math, especially the first couple episodes. We did some in-depth ones. Like, go back and watch like the first episode on the 6 unit. It's the very first show on there. We did a lot more deeper analysis than we're doing now on there, and we showed how we got that back end number, and it's all based off that income approach and then what the going cap rate is for the area.
Yeah. Yeah, we go into a deep dive in the financials at the end of every episode, and Chris does a really good job breaking that down, and I think that'll answer a lot of the questions on the value for multifamily properties.
All right, Terrance, just you pick the questions.
What do we got,
man?
Oh, you want me to pick them?
Yeah, I want to spice things up.
Let the one you're on there, Isaac Hernandez. That looks pretty good.
So Isaac says, how do I get started with wholesaling? First question. Second question, I'm also a veteran. Today's Veterans Day. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
appreciate your service.
Thank you.
And can I use my VA loan? I have a good credit score above 700. So 2 different questions. I got wholesaling and can I use my VA loan?
Okay, let's unpack the first one, Isaac. How do I get started when doing wholesaling? So I think the best thing you can do is there's some really good podcasts on Bigger Pockets that talk about wholesaling. Ryan Dossey is probably one of the most well-known wholesalers in the country. He has done a lot in different markets, specifically Indiana. So I would follow Ryan Dossey on Instagram. I would maybe listen to his podcast. There's probably some really good literature on wholesaling. But the key for me is I learn by watching other people do it. So I would link up with, maybe there's another veteran in your market that's doing it that would want to mentor you, and you could maybe volunteer for him, stuff envelopes when they're doing mailers. There's a bunch of different things you could help a wholesaler with, even door knocking, to really learn the ins and outs. If you wanted to just get a summary, I think you could listen to a podcast that's been on Bigger Pockets. I would, look at Ryan Dossey. He's one of the best. I've spent a lot of time with him. He's really, really great at what he does. That's what I would do if I wanted to learn it. I could sit here and break down step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I think the best thing would be listen to a podcast and find someone in your market that's doing it and try and learn from them.
So would you go out there, because I see this, and I'm not a wholesaler, would you go out there and spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a wholesale course?
No,
Yeah,
definitely do not do that. You can listen to a podcast for free, multiple podcasts. You could even DM one of the wholesalers that you see on Instagram, and they're probably willing to get on a call with you. The thing I would do that's free, and you're going to learn the best, is just from watching someone do it and being an apprentice or just free labor for them for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It's very easy to do, but I think there are some nuances, especially based on different markets in the country and what gets the best response. So I would just go work for someone before I would spend any money on a course or spend any money on mailers. I've had multiple friends that have wanted to get into wholesaling. They've racked up $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in debt. of credit card debt, paying for courses, paying for mailers, and it just ends up being a complete waste. Go learn from someone that's doing it in your market, and that's what I would recommend for that question, Isaac. You should definitely use your VA loan. I've helped multiple people. One of them, my CFO is a former veteran, and he was able to buy a property here in Denver. We bought it 2 years ago for, let's call it $600,000. He was able to use his entire VA loan to buy it. Then we put in the cash to renovate it, and the home just appraised for $860,000.
Dude, that's great.
So killed it. Yeah. And so I think the VA loan is great if you're going to do a value add property or any kind of house hack where you can buy it. They'll fund 100% of it. So no money out of pocket, a little bit higher interest rate. Your payment's going to be higher. Then you can go in there and do kitchens, bathrooms, paint, put your own personal touch on it, refinance it a year later, take advantage of these low interest rates, and you're going to be sitting really, really pretty.
And you can even pull out some cash.
You can even pull out some cash. That's right. So I think that's a great strategy for the VA loan. If you can find a little bit of a fixer-upper, put some sweat equity into it, and then refinance it, that would be my use of a VA loan.
I agree. And I would like either wholesaling and using the VA loan. Those are going to be two separate worlds.
Right.
Because, wholesaling, you're not going to, you're just putting things under contract, selling it. Even if you wanted to buy it, buying a motivated seller's property with the VA loan is going to be tough.
Right.
Especially since VA appraisals, they cannot be rushed. They're going to take 30 days to close in the current environment.
That's right.
But go out there and do what Terrance said, start your wholesaling business because that's a business you're doing. Right. Just like I'm a realtor, that's my business. Terrance is a syndicator and multifamily operator. That's his business. We have put a lot of time and equity into those businesses until they start making us a profit.
That's right.
But you can still invest. I've house hacked. Terrance has house hacked. Go out there and go buy a single family home up to 4plex with a VA loan, move out after a year, add some value, and start building your rental portfolio that way.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You're right. You could buy a 4plex with the VA loan, fix it up a little bit, and then refinance. Yeah, that's a great, and then you're getting cash flow and you have the equity, you get both. That's a great point.
So Isaac, dude, I hope that helped you out. Put up a follow-up question there if you want to. But yeah, two different things, learn wholesaling, and there's a ton of great resources and bigger pockets about house hacking. So
yeah, thank you for your service.
House hack. Oh, yes.
There's a question up there. What do we got? We're just on our topic of fourplexes and house hacks. Juan.
From Juan.
Juan Aviles. Can you use an FHA loan to get a duplex?
Yes. Next question.
100% yes, and that's a great strategy. What would be, so here's a question, since you deal with this a lot. If I am going to use an FHA loan to make an offer on a duplex and it's competitive, what are some things that you would recommend to Juan and some other people that are going to go FHA for their financing on the way to communicate so that way the broker that's representing the seller takes you more seriously and doesn't view it as a negative? Yeah,
and so what Terrance is saying, if I'm buying a property with an FHA loan and Terrance is buying a property as an investor, either all cash or putting down a 25% down payment, a lot of times, even if he might be a little bit lower and less, he's going to be a less headache of a client, less headache of a seller, or less headache of a buyer because he's not living in the property. He doesn't really care about it. Plus, FHAs have a higher appraisal standard for health and safety. No chipping paint, no missing guardrails.
Does it take longer as well?
Than if you're cash. Yeah. No, you can rush FHA. Oh, okay. It's VAs that you can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So FHA, it's not the time. It's more of the details with the loan.
It's what I've boiled down to. It's the when you do the appraisal, if you're doing a conventional,
right?
They both still do the appraisal, but FHA, they do a health and safety appraisal.
Right.
And dude, you've seen multis. I mean, if there's chipping paint,
stuff everywhere,
you can't do FHA. You're missing a guardrail on the front step, you can't do FHA.
So what are you recommending your clients when they're submitting offers with FHA? What is a couple tips you can give?
So work with a good lender that knows the investment game, knows the multifamily game. Obviously work with a good agent that knows that game because there's a lot more than just submitting an offer and writing it.
Right.
But we all a lot of times too will write limited inspection items where we say, hey, when it comes time to your inspection item, what we communicate, we're not going to nickel and dime you. Right. We're just going to worry about things that are health and safety over $1,500.
Gotcha.
So that way, if there's a sewer issue, roof issue, which is a
very common in Denver.
Yeah. That way they know you're not going to nickel and dime over stupid things. Where an investor won't. So you as a owner occupant house hacker, let them realize that you're not going to be stupid nickel diming over little things.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So FHA is definitely the way to go. I think the key, what I took away from that is make sure you have a great lender. and the way the offer is submitted is really going to matter. So you put yourself in a good position to get the deal. Because sometimes agents representing sellers are going to view it as an inferior offer if it's FHA, even if it's $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 more than the other offers, just because of the headaches they could experience.
You know what the interesting thing is? Yearcastle, the brokerage I'm with, has published data that properties that go under contract with FHA, they're actually less likely to follow a contract than all cash offer.
That's interesting.
Like all cash falls out like 24% of the time.
Where did they publish that? That's a great stat for anyone that's buying FHA to show that's
at least in the Denver market.
They should attach that with their offer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if an agent saw that, like they're less likely to fall out than cash, it's going to change the way they view, because it just has a stigma. And I've never submitted FHA, but I've just seen it a lot and heard that feedback. So I'm just curious as to how you're navigating your clients that are, because I know you guys are really successful with FHA.
Yeah. A lot of it just comes down to like, we over communicate to the agent, and a lot of times we educate the agent, educate the seller through the agent, but we have to do it obviously, tactfully as well. Right. Like, hey, just know about this. Did you know about this? Like, yeah, we're very big on that. Like, hey, here's our client. Like, we will close. We'll get things done.
Right.
We often send over like, hey, here's 5 other properties closed in the last 3 months, similar terms. Like, we'll get the deal done.
We'll get it done.
Yeah.
Cool. It's good stuff.
This question comes up a lot. So Cam says, do you have any general tips of finding off-market deals for multifamily properties? So let's talk about 5+, because 5+ is very different than 2 to 4 units, I think. Those are two different worlds.
Right. So off-market multifamily and commercial deals are going to come from a small group of brokers that are very connected in that market, that know the sellers really well. They know their situations and they're in constant communication. Can you send out a mailer? You could. I believe the chances of getting a deal done in the commercial space through a mailer is 5 to 10%. Do I know people have done it? Yeah. But they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year to get one deal. Because people that own these kind of properties are pretty sophisticated. They have pretty good net worth. And normally they understand real estate. It's not your typical just mom and pop that's just bought one property. Normally they've bought and sold properties multiple times if they have, a 20, a 25 or 30 unit or whatever, anything north of that. So you're dealing with people that have relationships with other brokers, know the market. So I think the key is building relationships with the right brokers in your market that have access to off-market deals. Now, when you build that relationship, we've gone over this several times. When you're building that relationship, one of the ways you're going to put yourself at the top of that list is having a pre-approval letter or a proof of funds, so they know that you have the financial ability to close when they bring you an off-market deal. Number 2 is you have to know the market. You have to have a very clear buy box. You have to know what you're looking for. If you meet with someone that has access to off-market deals and they have 25 people calling them saying, hey, we really want your next off-market deal, they're not going to consider you unless they know that you have the ability to close and you know what you're looking for. So those are things. So I think you could try a mailer if you're willing to spend a lot of money and time and spin your wheels. That definitely is a way to do it. You could pick up the phone and cold call a bunch of owners in your market. You could definitely do that as well. The lowest hanging fruit is building relationships with the 3 or 4 or 5 people in your market that do that full time, that know the owners of these buildings and these properties and know which one is willing to sell if they have the right buyer and the right offer. And so you build a relationship with them through follow-up, through bringing a proof of funds, through having a very clear buy box. And that's the way I've been able to do it, is I built relationships starting years ago, and I was able to prove that, hey, I'm someone you can trust when you have this off-market deal, because brokers only get off-market deals so many times a year. And when they get that opportunity, they have to close. They're 100% commission. And so they want to deal with someone that they know is going to perform. Yep. And so you have to prove that you're that person. And the way to prove that, have some proof of financial ability to close and be very specific about what you're looking for. And then they're going to take you seriously, and you will see your phone start to ring.
So I completely agree with everything you said. And I'm going to give one more idea as to what all these brokers do. This is how every commercial broker starts. Right. I should say probably almost every commercial broker starts. They start by pounding the phones.
400 dials a week.
Yeah. I mean, it's 300 to 400 dials a week is what I've heard. I mean, I started out myself 5 or 6 years ago, and it was not my cup of tii. But they, you're usually going to be a junior agent to a full, what do you call them? Senior agent. Thank
senior
you.
Broker. Yeah.
Hey, he's the guy that has experience.
Actually, advisors.
Is that the
investment advisors?
Okay.
Senior investment advisors.
They're still cold callers for the junior guys.
Right.
And again, I'm just saying this is the game. I've been there and done that myself. They're going to make 300, 400 cold calls a week to their database of owners for this neighborhood or part of town. And I've made those phone calls before. You're not the only dude calling that owner. And they've been like, I used to do this. And they're like, something was telling me, I've been getting 5 calls a week for the last 20 years. I mean, it's just ridiculous numbers. So, it's very hard for, as you said, a mailer to compete with 5 committed brokers that, hey, 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, they were just dialing.
That's right.
And that's why a lot of that, the bigger stuff, commercial brokers, they control that.
They dominate that space. Yeah. So it can be done. It has been done. I've actually done it. I've spent time direct to sellers and gotten deals done. But the amount of time and energy and resources it takes to do that, it's my time becomes much better spent just building relationships with the right people and letting them know that what we're looking for, and when they have it, we'll close. And that allows you to focus on other parts of the business that you can grow. Yeah. So that would be those would be my tips. Now, if you're in that 2 to 4 unit range, I don't think a ton of people are calling those owners. No. I'm sure there's probably some people doing some phone calls, but nothing like the big multis. Right. So that's where more the traditional direct to owner. That would work. Yeah. A mailer might work with them. Yes. Yeah. Or if it's under 4 units. That's right. Or if you want to cold call them too, I think that would be a lot more effective than cold calling apartment owners. Yeah. And you can, if you live in a title state, not an attorney abstract state, you can just get a list from the title company saying, hey, what are all the 2 to 4 units that have been owned for legacy owners over 10 years, 20 years? And they'll give you that list. And then the trick comes, how do you find that owner's cell phone number? Because that's another. Most of them, at least for the multis, they will put in some bogus phone number or like their law firm's phone number. That's right. If it's 2 to 4 units, you should be able to find it pretty easily. Yeah. But if it's over 4 units, they're going to have a secretary you're going to have to get through. So Cam, I don't know. Hopefully that helped and give you some guidance. Yeah. But yeah, as Terrance said, this is how I've seen him build his business, man. It's relationships and follow up and patience. Like all of that. Before 5 minutes before we hit live on this, he was preaching that to one of his friends, helping him do a deal. Like, no, right. I want to take that. Just be patient. That's like he literally said like 4 times in like 3 minutes. Most people don't want to hear that though. Patience? I don't want to do that. No, that's not fun. Chum. Do you guys have any tips on buying property out of state? That's all you, Terrance. Well, we actually have a podcast that we did together on buying out of state that I would recommend to check out. Bigger Pockets has some good stuff on buying out of state. I have purchased out of state, and the punchline for me, Chum, is you have to have a competitive advantage. There's no reason to buy out of state unless you have a competitive advantage. If it just looks more attractive because it's on paper, then I would rethink your strategy and what your goals are, because most likely you're going to get a better net return after 3 or 4 or 5 years after you factor in vacancy, delinquency, maintenance, property management fees, turning units, budget running over. Once you factor in all of your expenses and you look at what you could have done in your market, you're probably going to do better. If you have a competitive advantage, then I think you just have to have really good systems and processes in place, and remember the saying, people only do what you inspect, not what you expect. So you have to inspect everything. If you're going to buy out of state, inspect, verify everything. Don't take people's word for it. People say something's done, go check it yourself, inspect it, verify for yourself. If you're dead set on doing it. If you don't have a competitive advantage, I wouldn't go out of state. I think there's so much more risk. There's so many other ways that you lose money when you're in the state, and you can manage the turn, you can manage the construction, you can oversee the maintenance, oversee the leasing, everything. The tenant application, the tenant screening. You can do those things from afar. It's just much more difficult. I would, if I'm starting out and I'm a first-time investor, I want to be able to touch it, feel it, see it. Now, that's not a popular thought. A lot of people disagree with that, especially that live in really dense, highly appreciated markets, like on the coast.
Let me ask you this,
Yeah.
because we have both lived in the South Bay in Los Angeles, like Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, which is just that beach area south of LAX.
Right.
We didn't know each other, but I think we lived there around the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
If you lived in LA, would you invest out of state, or would you still be investing in Southern California?
If I lived in Manhattan Beach, would I be investing in
Well, you won't
LA?
be investing in Manhattan Beach.
No, yeah, you can't. The average purchase price there is too high.
Yeah.
Beautiful place to visit. I would probably, my first strategy would be to buy in LA or just go off the coast.
Yeah.
I think you
just
can
go
buy,
inland, right?
go inland. Yeah. I think you don't have to be on, I would go to even 20, 30, 40 miles inland. And I think there's deals there. I'm sure I would go where everyone's not going. So everyone's going to, Hermosa, all these other places, Long Beach. I would go inland and try and find an opportunity there. And this is coming from someone that's invested in 10 or 11 states. And, the net effect was 2018, 19, I just looked at the returns. I was like, I'm much better where I have a competitive advantage, which is Denver and Des Moines, Iowa. And Des Moines, Iowa, just because my brother lives there, my dad, I had really deep relationships with brokers.
And you're from there.
I'm from there. We had really good construction relationships, so we could source the deals. We had the construction, and then we built our own property management there. And we built it because we couldn't find someone to manage it. We were losing so much money from property management because of the issue, the reasons that I stated. So can it be done? Yes. I would be hesitant and very cautious if I did not have a clear competitive advantage.
All right.
How about this? This is a good question. I've said this. Jagadish
says, do I need a realtor to buy a home? Why can I approach homeowners directly and do the deal?
I like where your head's at. I really like where your head's at. I think you can save a lot of money if you do it the right way. And if you have an attorney, if you can approach owners directly, I would just make sure.
Are you talking about buying
he looks like he's talking
non-listed or properties on the MLS?
Once it's on the MLS, you can't do that.
Well, I mean,
you can,
but most of the time, like for MLS properties, like the seller is going to be paying for both sides of the commission on there. A lot of agents would rather not deal with an unrepresentative buyer
for
because
liability.
It's liability. It's also just a pain in the ass. Like you don't know what you're doing. They have to hold your hand and coach you. It's gonna be a lot more of a roller coaster. They don't want to deal with it. They're not making any more money.
Well, what I've seen them try and do, because I've tried to call some properties that are like that I'm like, hey, I have my realtor's busy. I'm calling you, and they want to represent both sides. So then there's liability because it's like, hey, you're actually representing the buyer, but now you're trying to represent this, or you're representing the seller. So that's where the liability would come in because they're going to try and represent both sides. Because they're going to see
they want double commission.
Right. If it's off market, not listed, I think definitely. I've seen friends have success with putting mailers of their family and putting mailers in neighborhoods they really want to live in, even if the homes aren't for sale. And then they'll get someone to call them, and all they need is an attorney, someone to draw up the contract, and you can do that for a fraction of the cost. I mean, under $1,000 versus 6%.
Yeah.
Which, and if you live in a market like Denver, where the average purchase price is over $500,000, 6% ends up being a lot of money.
Chunk of money.
It's a chunk of money. So you end up getting a better deal if you can do that. If you're looking for your personal home for your family and there's a neighborhood you really like and no homes are for sale or the homes you want are not for sale, I love the idea of putting some flyers or cold calling and going directly to the owner. I think that's really savvy, especially if you live in a very appreciated market where the 6% makes a lot of money.
You bought a new primary earlier this year.
Yeah.
Did you use an agent or did you call people yourself?
So my wife and I, that's a good question. My wife and I had the neighborhood we wanted to live in, and there was a property that had been under contract several times. And then my partner was a broker. So then he rebates all the commission. So basically we just discount. So when the seller, they just give us the net number taking out the commission. So that's what I've been able to do. But I would do that strategy if I didn't have that advantage. Yeah. Because that's the way to do it. If you know the neighborhood, you can put flyers or just call in the specific area. Yeah, you're going to save a bunch of money because the seller's going to look at what's my net price that I'm receiving. And if
I've noticed like FSBOs.
Yeah.
A lot of times FSBOs, they're some of the greediest sellers out there because like I'm not paying commissions. They also want like top dollar plus $20,000. You've seen that before, right? With some
I've seen that. But I've also, I've definitely seen that.
And there's a lot of good deals there.
I've definitely seen, some sellers are like, listen, if you're not represented, I'm not representing. Well, there's a deal right now we're doing. I'm helping a friend with in Swansea. No one's represented, and they're buying it for well below market because neither side's represented. He's like, listen, if it's amazing how many times I've been like transacting these things that they're not even for me, just helping people. But in the last week, it's happened 3 times where I've talked to the seller directly. And they've said, oh yeah, if neither side's represented, I'll sell it for this. And it's significantly below market. So I've been surprised by how well that has worked recently here. So yeah, I like that strategy. Ooh, that's your question right there. Neshi Bond. Man, we got a lot of questions today. We're behind. Mm-hmm. This is right up Chris's alley. I'll ask the question. How do you run the numbers for a house hack versus a regular investment?
So
spreadsheet.
Yes, I answer this question like 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Because we do a lot of.
Maybe 5 times a day. This is like your whole business.
Well, now we've got
here.
YouTube videos to help out
okay.
with that.
You're setting videos.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's a great question. So there's 2 ways you actually have to analyze it. So when you are buying a house hack, I look at it 2 ways. While you're living there, for that 1 year requirement that the lender requires, I am living there, and I might be renting out bedrooms, or I might be renting out the other units next to me. And then there's when you move out as a rental property. So I think the most important way to run numbers is when you move out as a future rental property.
Right.
Because you're going to buy that house hack and live there for a year or 2 and hopefully move out and convert to rental. That's the name of the game. Or move out and do like a live and flip and hopefully take a bunch of chips off the table and take that money capital gains free after 2 years. Right. But you're exiting that property after 1 to 2 years typically. So as a house hack, a lot of people get so focused on while they're living there and like, oh gosh, I have to live there, make this amount of money while I live there, which I think is important. But it's like, hey, that's there for 1 year. What's it like when you move out? That's going to be a 5 or 10 year hold for you before you do something with that property. So I run it first as a long-term rental property.
And if it makes sense as that, then it's going to make sense as you living there.
Yep.
And house hacking.
Because no matter if you're living anywhere, you're going to have you're paying rent or paying mortgage somewhere. And if you can live for free, awesome. If you're paying a few $100s, whatever, like a lot of the house hacks here in Denver, we buy a lot of single family homes now for house hacks because just, multifamily is very low inventory. Yeah. So we buy a lot of single family homes and people live anywhere from like negative $300 a month to about positive $800 a month, depending on how many bedrooms we're willing to buy and rent out. When they move out, though, we're anywhere from a negative $200 a month to a positive $1,000 a month, or I'm sorry, about positive $800 a month if they go room by room. So it's that I think it's you run the numbers as a rental property, but you plug in there like your 5% or 3.5% down payment.
So if it works as a long-term rental, then it's going to work as a house hack. So that's the key.
Yeah.
If it makes sure it works as a long-term rental, if you're not living there, and if you can cover the basis or get close, it sounds like then it could be a deal.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
If it's negative 200, what's the strategy there that you've created enough equity that it makes sense when you sell it? So like if after I move out, I'm negative 200 a month, what's the play there?
So the play
you're
there,
paying down the principal enough to where it makes sense.
Because remember, they're putting down 3 point. We got some people they're using VA loans. That might be like a gentleman we talked to earlier. If you put 0% down, that's not an investment loan. Right. 3.5% down FHA, 5% conventional. Those are not investment loans. Those are homeowner loans.
So you
can't expect to
be cash flow.
Make a ton of cash flow when you're putting 0 to 5% down.
Got it.
And
that makes sense.
Denver market, like most markets, they're hot markets right now. So great, people can buy. We just closed on I'm trying to think, like a $440,000 duplex in Lakewood a couple months ago. We just did a podcast with this couple. They put 3.5% down, all in for everything. They were like $16,000 to closing table.
Insane.
If you and I go out there and buy as a 20% down, we're gonna be in there for $100,000.
Right.
So they're like, and they will be cash flow positive when they move out. But a lot, sometimes they'll be like -2. And it's like, hey, you can put 20,000 down and then be -200 for a couple years, or do you want to save $100,000 to be $300 positive cash flow?
So it's really dependent on the financing.
Yeah.
So you could be negative if you have really aggressive financing. That makes sense. Got it.
And I'm a big fan of like high leverage.
Right.
Keep cash in the bank because you're getting the best gift in the world. It's a 30-year fixed rate at sub 3% right now.
Get as much of it as you can.
Grab it.
Wave it in.
Compounding interest over the next 10 years, as long as you hold on to the assets.
Right.
You're going to be most likely very, very wealthy. What if this whole time while you're in Denver, Terrance, you were doing a house hack every single year at 5% down? You would have so many more properties that way.
Right. Yeah. That'd be a really good strategy.
So hopefully it helps you out. And Bigger Pockets has tons of great resources on there as well. So make sure you check that out.
That was really well said.
Well, because I
learned a lot. Yeah, I can tell you've practiced that. You've rehearsed that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, okay.
So many questions.
Jamal, this is a good question.
Ooh.
What are handyman issues compared to the issues you need to seek out with a GC or general contractor for? This one jumped out to me because I've learned this mistake, and I think probably most investors have. A lot of times we want the cheapest person, or you get the handyman. Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. You know how many times I've had handymen flood a rental condo of our clients? 3 times last year.
Wow. A handyman?
A handyman.
So not having like a licensed plumber or a licensed electrician, just having anybody that says they can fix.
But the handyman's
things.
$30 an hour.
Right. Yeah.
A plumber's what, $90 an hour.
Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt, because I a lot of handymen are great, but make sure they stay within the scope of work. Like I personally have very limited scope of work I do with handymen, but if it has anything to do with plumbing, electrical, I want a licensed person. I will pay them their going rate so they don't burn the house down or flood the house. I'd rather spend $200 more than have a $20,000 insurance claim. So I understand those, like, hey, there's handymen and they might be able to say that they can do all of it, but I would definitely vet them, because I've heard many horror stories of, oh, a handyman, oh, another one popped in mind, a handyman, oh, they can pour the concrete in the back for a back patio, and then the investor had to go in there and have to like jack it all up and hire, so it's double the cost then.
Right.
So
yeah, I think handyman could do painting and maybe lay laminate if the subfloor is level.
Yeah.
There's probably maybe some other things, but anything to do with plumbing and water can just cause so much damage to a property. You really want a licensed plumber and someone that has references that you verified. This is another reason why I like in-state. You can see the plumber's work, you can go see the other projects he's done. You're not taking someone's word for it. So plumbing, electrical, HVAC, anything to do with air conditioner, swamp cooler, boilers, furnaces, you really want licensed. Don't trust a handyman that says they've done it before, can do it. Anything to do with a foundation, anything to do with a roof, you want a licensed roofer, you want someone that understands foundations, that engineers looked at it. Windows a handyman can do.
Yeah.
I think paint a handyman can do. Doorknobs, latches on fences. There's certain things that, handyman, it makes sense to hire just someone for $25-$30 an hour. But anything to do with the mechanicals, the plumbing on a property, the roof on a property, the foundation on a property, you want to pay someone that you vetted, that you can trust, that when there's an issue, you can call them to come back. Especially when you start talking about multifamily. I mean, that's on the building we're doing right now. We're paying a plumber more than I've ever paid, just because I want to know that it's done right.
Which property is this?
This 40 unit. Yeah, like there's units stacked on top of each other. The entire thing, is old. The plumbing, galvanized pipe. It's like, I just want it done right. The last thing I want when I move a new tenant in there, a market tenant that's paying a premium to live in a brand new building, they have a water leak their first month, or it's leaking down to the bottom.
And what if it's on the third floor leaking? Now you're going to have to remediate that
100%.
And then fix what? $10,000-$20,000 worth of work, and maybe have mold issues then.
So you don't want to save a couple bucks in the short term to then spend thousands of dollars later. So I would, stick to hire licensed contractors that you vetted, verified, come from people you trust. That will save you a lot of money long term. Personal experience speaking. And these things are pouring in here.
I know.
Let's go. What does Ben Mendez have to say?
Ben says, I am currently buying a 2-family house. Current owner has a tenant living in the 3rd floor, but doesn't have permits to make it a legal 3-family house. Okay.
So
currently buying a 2-family.
So 2-unit. So is it a duplex?
Is it a duplex, or is it like a mother-in-law suite in there? See, I read that as mother-in-law suite.
Well, if it's a 3rd floor.
Yeah.
So it's to make it a threeplex. So it sounds like he has a home that's up down, and maybe there's another story that he has a family living in, but it's not 3rd. Any tips should we make the 3rd floor vacate?
So
what I would do there, I'm not sure I totally understand, but it sounds like you have some extra space. I would find a tenant that's willing to pay you more to use the middle and the top floor, and then just leave it as, from an insurance perspective and a liability perspective, if there was a fire or something like that with an unpermitted unit up above or anything like that, that the city isn't qualifying as a livable space, you could be in, there could be some liability there. So I would want to just charge more and find a tenant that's willing to take the additional space without actually having a different lease. I would have whatever it's zoned for, have that many leases, and just have someone that's going to take the extra space and pay you a little bit more. That's what I would do.
And there's a ton of properties here in Denver, I think all around the country, where there are unpermitted, like, be a single family home and unpermitted mother-in-law suite in the basement.
Right.
Basically like an up-down duplex. And we buy these a lot for house hacks, and we always tell our clients, hey, understand these are pros and cons. This is not permitted.
Right.
Zoning doesn't allow for it, but you're going to get the most amazing cash flow in the market right now because of just the way it is. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a rewarder, like, hey, it's unpermitted. Understand, here's the pros of it. Here's the cons of it. What's your risk tolerance? A lot of people, they're fine with it because, like, hey, I can make great cash flow. It's been like this for 20 years. We've seen other places like this for 20 years. I mean, you've seen a ton of those places.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And so it kind of comes down to what your risk tolerance is as well.
If you're buying it if you're paying market for the two units and you're getting the third as kind of a kick-in and they're not valuing it, then that can make a lot of sense. And I've done that a lot, where someone's selling.
What do you mean?
Well, like I've bought fourplexes before where they actually have a fifth unit, but they're just selling it as a fourplex. They're not charging me for a fiveplex because it's not permitted. So that can make a lot of sense to your point, where I'm getting income as if the NOI on the balance sheet, on the P&L, looks like it's a fiveplex, but I paid a fourplex price. Well, then it just comes down to your risk reward. Are you comfortable having a tenant in there in an unpermitted grandfathered unit? And that's just a personal question. I've done it if I know the municipality and know their laws around it, and I feel comfortable with their, how they've come down on that in the past. What their history is for that kind of if they do catch you. And
I think it comes down to the risk reward. Hey, if I get caught, what's the downside to it? What fine am I paying?
Yeah.
But if I don't, here's your reward, and are you comfortable with that?
Exactly. Yeah. But as long as you're paying for what's actually permitted and zoned, and you're just getting it as the extra unit, then I like that play. I think that could make a lot of sense. It also comes down to the age of the building, what is the foundation, those kind of things from an insurance perspective. But generally speaking, I've done it. You just have to be comfortable with knowing what the risk is. And I would want to look in city council, how the city zoning or building department has ruled on similar properties when they've come down. And that'll give you a feel for what would happen if they caught your property. We got a banking question up there.
Can we go here? Yeah. All right. Anna Dennett? How do you say that? Yeah. All right. Mr. AT. Here we go. Do banks give a loan for a property in a different state?
I've had one of my best lenders in Denver on Denver properties is actually a bank in Iowa. So yes, they absolutely do. It comes down to balance sheet. It comes down to their comfort level with you as an operator, you as an owner. But yes, I've had multiple banks lend to me out of state.
But these are banks you have relationships with, right?
Relationships over a long time and personal guarantees. So as long as they trust the operator, know the operator, comfortable with the asset they're buying. Like I couldn't call the bank in Iowa and have them lend to me on a ground up industrial building or ground up office building. But if I call them and say, hey, I'm buying a multifamily value add property right down the middle of the fairway for what I do, they'll lend to me every day of the week. So if they're comfortable with you, if it's a strategy that they know that you have successfully executed in the past, absolutely they can lend to you out of state. And building a relationship with banks is very key to building your real estate portfolio. The more banking, the more financing options you have, just having optionality with different kinds of banks and knowing what their sweet spot is, what they're comfortable with, is huge to have in your tool belt.
Now, if you're a brand new investor, the answer is most likely no.
Right.
Terrance is not a brand new investor. He's done deals, completed deals with banks.
I had to prove myself.
He's got the track record.
Times, yes.
But if you're a brand new investor, or if you're looking to go out there and do like a 30-year fixed loan, like a Fannie Freddie loan, those lenders usually cannot lend in other states. Most lenders are just like realtors, or they're licensed in one state. So you can, but if you're a brand new investor, very, very low chance of it. All right, so we got 15 minutes before the next Ride Along show drops here on the YouTube channel.
Oh, right. Do we have a college student there? Let's get him on here.
Kevin, go ahead.
What do you recommend I should do as a college student who wants to invest after graduation next year? First of all, I love that you're in college looking at real estate. I wish I would have been looking at real estate in college, so I love that. Kudos to you. What do you recommend I should do as a college student to invest after graduation next year? you probably deal with people in this same kind of season of life. What kind of advice are you giving them? So not a lot of income history.
Yeah.
Maybe on my first job, not a lot of cash in the bank. What's your advice for people in that situation?
I would start talking to an agent and lender now in the market you want to move into, because I think the best thing to do is go out there and just house hack.
Right.
And even if you're 21,
define house hack for him.
So go out there, buy a house or a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex, with 0 to 5% down, or 3.5 to 5% down. Go out there and house hack. It is a very keep it simple, stupid strategy that works. You have to pay your rent somewhere. For the first 10 years of my life, post-college, I was this guy having roommates, but I was always organizing the lease. I wish I had bought houses and then my roommates paid me versus me collecting money and paying the landlord.
100%.
You've been there too, right?
100%.
So be that guy, because generally when you're in college, after college, you're going to be living with 2 or 3 other guys. So rather than doing it with landlords and you're a tenant, go out there and buy a place. So that might be maybe a parent can co-sign for you, or maybe a friend can co-sign for you. Maybe you don't need one because you graduate and you have a good enough W-2 job where they can lend to you. But I would start forgetting those pieces now and do a house hack ASAP. And will a house hack get you rich? No, but it's going to build some great long-term also house hack while figuring out other investing strategies you want to do, whether that's multifamily or fix and flips. But a house hack is a no-brainer because you're going to be living with roommates anyway, most likely. So might as well build equity and make some cash flow.
I love it. I think no one really talks about this. They're talking about going out. They're talking about your car you're driving. They're talking about the clothes you're wearing, the shoes. All these other things that when I was in college and out of college focused on. Focus on being the landlord. It's not sexy, but down the road, you're going to be the cool guy. When people are writing you Tinder app? When people are writing you checks, you're going to be the man, and you're going to feel really good, and your bank account is going to look a lot better than all your other friends. So I love it. Figure out the market you're going to live in. Get a house hack. Buy a duplex. Buy a fourplex. Rent the others out. Even rent the other bedrooms in your unit out, and have everyone paying your mortgage while they're paying down the principal, and you're living basically for free. And you're going to be saving so much money. And it's going to teach you so much responsibility when you see how a mortgage works, how insurance works, how, principal reduction works. Just the understanding of that out of college, I think is going to be invaluable. And I love that. I think if you do that out of your first year out of college, you stick to the plan, in 3 or 4 years, you're going to be so thankful you did that. And you're going to be in such a better place having taken on that responsibility and having that experience. So I love that. And
I've got clients, they're in their early 20s, a year or 2 out of college, and they're house hacking and do that. Modeling, looking stuff, and they're living modestly, they're saving their money, they're buying rental properties, but to get to hey, if they can get to $4,000 a month cash flow, they can quit their job.
Right.
They can do that a lot of times by the time they're 30.
Right.
Which is nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, just playing that out, by the time you're 25, 26, 27, you will have made so much money by paying down your principal and by any appreciation that happens, that you're going to be in a completely different world where you're not going to have to depend on a W-2, which is really freedom. You're going to be buying time. And that's really what you're doing. The earlier you start, you're buying time. So when you have a family and have children or have other hobbies you want to do, you're going to be able to do it and not have to be slave to a W-2.
So I want to do some of these follow-up questions here. So Kevin asked earlier, when you're analyzing the house hack, would you do it as a rental like you mentioned? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want it to be your primary, but you want to underwrite it as a rental.
Yeah.
So that way when you move out, you know that the numbers work.
You are buying and living in a future rental property. That's why I always coach my clients. You're buying and living in a future rental property.
Man, we got a lot of
You get one jump out
great
here?
This is great stuff, man. I'm really enjoying this. I wish we had unlimited time to answer all these. We got so many questions here. The last one, is that where we're at?
Well, we got 9 minutes. So
this is a low-hanging fruit and really good for bigger pockets. Ronak at the bottom there too. Her question is, what is the best source of forms for legal paperwork, i.e. leases?
Where are they
Bigger
going? Pockets.
Bigger Pockets is the number one place. They have a ton.
I think for every state they have it.
Yeah, they have one. They have a lease for every state. So go to Bigger Pockets Pro membership. We actually have a discount. We'll put it in the show notes for the discount. I think you get a 20% discount by referencing the show notes.
I'll find it right now.
I think it's Ride Along BP. Ride Along BP gets you 20% as a pro member, and you'll get access to leases for every state. And they have a lot more documents as well. But Bigger Pockets is where you want to go.
Yeah,
that is the resource.
You would think we would eventually memorize these codes, huh? BP coupon codes.
Yeah.
What was your answer?
I said ride along BP.
You're right. All right.
20%, baby. Let's go. Get on there, Ronak. Okay, the last question. Here's one of the questions I really liked. Was another. Let's highlight the college kids. Jimmy Minor up there. Jimmy Minor.
Jimmy says, I'm in college and want to seek out absentee owners who are free, who own free and clear, and ask them to do seller financing. Then turn around and do a lease option. Is this a good idea?
Dude, I love where his head's at. Jimmy.
For a college kid.
I love it. If you want to come to Denver and work with me, I'd love where your head's at. Okay. I think that's a really interesting idea. You could definitely try it. I would get that list from a title company. They could give you multifamily properties that have no debt. That will be a good list. It'll be tough to do seller financing with no money down, so that'll be tricky. But if you're a really good salesman, you might be able to talk one or two into them if they really like your story. I think that's going to be more of like a legacy play for them. They're going to say, hey, I'm helping out this kid, and it's going to be good for me. You know, when he improves.
You're right. You can tug on some heartstrings.
You can tug on some heartstrings there. So I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's a great way to start putting some feelers out there and getting to know and getting to have those kind of conversations. Do I think you're going to have a lot of transactions? No. But I think it's going to be a great experience, and I love that you're trying and thinking that way, because those are the kind of people that would do a seller financing deal. I would try and have some equity somewhere so you could show that you have the ability to give them some cash. They're going to probably want some cash at some point. So make sure you have someone, a friend or a family member, that's willing to give you some money when you find the right person. But if you're persistent, you communicate really well, and you have a good story, I think you could pull a rabbit out of your hat there.
And especially if you don't have the capital to do it, because I agree with Terrance, the capital, plus you want some cash reserve funds because stuff will happen. Find a partner. If you can find some deals, you can go out there and find a partner, help fund things. So we gotta pick up Chris Henry here, since it is Veterans Day. We're going to priority to our military members.
Yeah, Chris.
So Chris says, active military here, planning on house hacking as the wife and I move around with properties in different states. How would you go about managing or using property managers between areas? So as Terrance said, thank you for your service. But, we live in Denver, which has some military bases. We also are just north of Colorado Springs, which has tons of bases. So we have lots of friends and clients that have house hacked here, house hacked elsewhere. If you're in the position to do it, man, house hack when you're at your different post. And then when you move out, your call. I'm a big proponent of property management, especially long distance. Like, I love property management because it's their job to make sure things are running right. So definitely house hacking as you go there. But I've had friends and clients self-manage long distance and also use property managers as well. So it kind of comes down to, I think, your risk tolerance, who do you know coming in, and your connections on the community.
And how much time you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have 4 or 5 properties, it's going to be a lot more time dealing with maintenance, dealing with leases, dealing with renewals, all those kind of things. Tenants are just always going to have issues, and they're going to want to talk to somebody. I really like the property management idea. I think what I would focus on is property managers that specialize in single family homes.
Yeah.
Find someone that specializes in single family. Don't find the biggest property manager or even the smallest that's doing multi or anything else. Find someone that specializes in single family. They're going to have the right contractors for you. They're going to know where the right tenants are for your units. And if you can find someone that does single family and has a military background, I think even better. You're going to have more in common. And the more that they have in common with you and the more they feel close to you, they're just going to spend more time on your property. So that, the closer relationship you're going to have with someone, obviously the more vested they're going to be. So that's been my strategy whenever I've invested out of state with other property managers, is finding someone that I have things in common with. We can build rapport, and naturally they're going to think of me first when things come up and try and put my properties as a priority.
And I agree. And while you're living there house hacking, you're going to be, as you drive around, you're going to see other for rent signs. Call those property managers, or call those and talk to those property managers, because, assuming you're at a base somewhere, a lot of it's going to be military housing. Yeah. Some are going to specialize in some manager. Like, start calling those property managers while you're house hacking there for that 1 or 2 years. Develop that relationship, see who you like. What amazes me too, my first place I bought when I moved out, and then I started trying to find a property manager, I had to call 4 property managers before one returned my phone call.
Yeah, it's tough.
Isn't that? It just still blows my mind. So you'll have to do that. Especially too, like if you're from, for example, like if you're from Colorado, Chris, and then you get stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and you have no connections, no competitive advantage there, no one, I would recommend using a property manager. Now, if you are stationed where you have connections and family, totally different story about maybe you can get by without a property manager.
Right.
But I would not get too tripped up on paying someone 8% to take care of a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 asset for you.
Yeah, because the time you're going to gain and what you can do at that time is going to be invaluable.
All right.
But I love that you're doing that, and I think that's going to be a really good strategy for you and your family long term. That's going to be awesome.
So I think we have time for one more question. Trey, this is a good one for you, Terrance. How does a private lender get back their money if after refinance you only get 70 to 85% of your money out of the house?
Well, most of the time, private lenders will only fund 75 to 80% of the purchase. So then when you refinance, you're going to get 80% of the new appraised value. So after you've added the value, they're going to get paid off first, and then you're going to get the remainder. If there is a shortfall, you're going to have to come up with it. Otherwise, you won't be able to refinance.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to come up with the equity. They will not release their lien on title until they're paid off in full with interest. But most of the time, a private lender is going to fund some kind of investment development opportunity where you're going to buy a house or a duplex or some kind of property, and you're going to rehab it, make improvements to it, and then the property's going to be worth more. And then when you go to refinance it, they're going to get paid off, and really their balance on the appraised value is going to be like 60 or 70%, and the bank is going to give you 75 or 80% of appraised value.
So look at it this way. So because Terrance is right.
I think
so
I understood that his question.
Well, I think it's if you refinance it and a property has an increase in value, they're not getting their money back. But so let's say you buy a house for $100,000 and you have a private lender give you 100% of the money.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you a $100,000 loan. You're in there, you're working, you use your own capital, go in there, increase the value. Now it appraises for so let's just say 150,000 for easy math.
Right.
Appraised for 150,000. Then you go in there and do a refinance. So if you do traditional lending, 75% of 150 is 112,500.
Right.
So you could pull out some of that cash, subtract the 100,000, and pay back your private lender. So they get their money back by the value of the property increasing, or you selling it, and hopefully the property value goes up. If it doesn't go up, you and the private lender have some things to work out.
Yeah, you should have to come with cash. Otherwise, you're going to be paying that private lender their interest until it's paid off.
Yeah.
But that is a good question. And you should definitely think through and seek some advice before you take out a private loan on what you're going to do with that money.
Cool. All right. So it is 2:59 Mountain Time. So we're going to wrap up here because in a minute, the next Ride Along show where Terrance and I go walk a fourplex. And this is a fourplex that Terrance bought a couple years ago, rehabbed it. Then I was getting into a 1031 exchange and just wanted to park my money. And timing worked out. The amount of capital I had worked out. So I ended up buying the deal as the long-term investor. So we kind of go through both sides of the equation there. Really cool walkthrough. Watch the show. Give us feedback on the show format. Throw questions in there because we love answering that stuff. So that show will drop on the Bigger Pockets YouTube channel.
Yeah, go check it out. We'd love to hear your feedback. And thanks for joining us. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but we'll be back on here in a couple weeks and ready to answer some more questions. That was awesome.
Thanks, everyone.